Okay, so we're making a video on male reproduction. So let's kind of hit the high points here. So if you were in lecture on last week, you already heard about this, but we'll talk about it a little bit more. So in the reproductive system, there are parts that are homologs. So homologs mean they're rising from the same structure, from the same tissue. So you can look over this chart and you can see the homologous organs. Okay, now, we also talked about the similarities between male and female. So the gonads are the primary reproductive organs. So that means that they're going to produce the gametes, and the gametes are the sex cells. So the ovaries make the eggs and the testes make the sperm. The hormones, the sex hormones, are produced by the gonads in both the male and the female. Okay, so those are the estrogen and the progesterone, and the testosterone and the androgens in the males. Okay, accessory reproductive organs are organs that they're essential for reproduction in order to fertilize the egg, but they're not responsible for making the gametes. I guess it's recording. I think it's recording. Okay, now, in puberty, puberty occurs, it's 9 to 14 in boys and 8 to 12 years old in girls. It all starts with gonadotropin releasing hormone. Precocious puberty is when it occurs earlier than normal. GnRH comes from the hypothalamus. It's going to be the hormone that's going to regulate the anterior pituitary, so it kind of controls everything that's going on in your body. There's a lot of different variables that have to happen in order for puberty to occur, but we're just kind of going to touch on it in general. Okay, so here's the perineum. Two different parts. The urogenital triangle is the top triangle. It's got the urinary and the genitals, and then the anal triangle is the posterior triangle. Okay, now gametogenesis is how we form eggs and sperm. So in females, it's oogenesis. That's how we make eggs, and in sperm, we make it's called spermatogenesis. Okay, and then brief review of heredity. We talk about meiosis, and we talked about this in lecture, so I'm just going to skip over it to keep the video short. In a human, there are 23 pairs of chromosomes, so that means we have 46 chromosomes. The first 22 chromosomes are autosomes, so they control body functions. The last pair of chromosomes are sex chromosomes, so they determine sex. Diploid means that you have two sets, so two sets of 23 gives you 46, and that's a diploid number in humans. Haploid is half that amount, and that's 23. Okay, so sex chromosomes, you guys know the sex is determined by the sperm. All the mom gives, the sex chromosomes that the mom donates are X or X's. That's all she has to give. So the sperm, though, they could either be X or they could be Y. Okay, now meiosis is the process, they call it reduction division. So it's the process of how we make sperm and eggs. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go from a diploid cell to a haploid cell. So if you compare meiosis and mitosis, you get two genetically identical daughter cells. In meiosis, you get 4 very different haploid daughter cells. Okay, number of chromosomes in daughter cells, mitosis, you have 46. Meiosis, you have 23. In meiosis, you also have two different things that are going to allow for genetic diversity. Those two things are crossing over and independent assortment. So crossing over is when some material is exchanged between the tetrads. Independent assortment means that when the chromosomes align at the middle of the cell in metaphase, it's random on which direction that they go. Okay, so here's just a picture. Eggs, you get one big egg with all the the organelles and the cytoplasm, and then 3 small polar bodies. In the males, you get 4 sperm. Okay, and we talked about this in lecture. I think you guys are okay with this. Okay, and we talked about non-disjunction. Okay, here's anatomy. We went over anatomy in lab. You're okay with that. Okay, and then we're going to talk about why the scrotum, how the scrotum works and how sperm develop. So the scrotum provides a cooler environment for the sperm to develop. So our book says it's got to be 3 degrees lower than body temperature. The raphe is just the seam that's in between the testes. It's on the external part of the scrotum. The layers of the scrotum, so there's skin, then there's a layer called the superficial fascia, and then there's the dartos muscle. The dartos muscle is there to help regulate the temperature of the testes so that the sperm stay at the right temperature so they develop. Okay, so now the spermatocord is what's going to connect the testes and the scrotum to the internal structure of the body. So there's a muscle called the cremaster muscle, and it's going to allow the testes to come closer to the body or to drop. Okay, there's fascia in there, and the fascia is just the connective tissue covering everything up. The ductus deferens. Okay, so the ductus deferens is the tube for the sperm to flow. It's also called the vas deferens. Okay, there's testicular arteries, there's veins, there's nerves, there's lymph vessels. The pampiniform plexus, I'm going to show you a picture here in a second, and then the inguinal canal I'll show you on the picture. Okay, so we looked at this in lab. So if you look, here are the testes. Okay, and then the inguinal canal is this opening here. So that the spermatocord is going to flow through the inguinal canal and into the body. Okay, now the idea behind this pampiniform plexus is that the blood, the testicular artery, is taking warm blood out to the testes. We don't want that blood to be hot. We don't want it to be greater than body temperature, or we don't want it to be body temperature. We want it to be cooler than that. So the plexus is this network of veins that covers the arteries, and what they're going to do is they're going to cool the blood. So it's a heat exchanger. So pretty much what's going to happen is the heat's going to be given away from the arterial blood into the venous blood. So the artery blood is coming out, it's going to the testes. The venous blood is returning back to the body. So this is being cooled and this is being heated up. Pretty slick, huh? Okay, there's just a picture of a cadaver. You can see everything on it, all the parts. Okay, this just explains the pampiniform plexus again. Okay, the testes is a sac-like extension of the peritoneum. Okay, and it's covered with the layer called the tunica vaginalis, and then there's another layer that's called the tunica albuginea. Okay, so the testes are divided into little lobules. Okay, and within those lobules are seminiferous tubules. Now, in these tubes, that's where the sperm are going to develop. Okay, so in those tubes, here's what you're going to find. You're going to find germ cells. Okay, so the germ cells are going to be the cells that develop into the sperm. There's going to be sustentacular cells. And these cells, what they're going to do is they're the support cells. They're the cells that are there to take care of the cells that are going to become the sperm. The sustentacular cells, what they do is they produce androgen binding protein. Okay, so androgen binding protein is essential for testosterone to work. If you don't have it, and if you have testosterone but no ABP, the testosterone is going to be ineffective. Okay, the sustentacular cells also produce inhibin, and we're going to talk about inhibin. They provide nutrients to the sperm so that the sperm have what they need to develop, and they also remove extra cytoplasm so that the sperm become these little tiny cells that we're used to seeing. The sustentacular cells also provide this thing called the blood-testes barrier. The blood-testes barrier, what it does is going to I think about it this way in terms of your immune system. The sperm that are developing are not genetically identical to your body cells. Okay, so they're all different. They have different DNA structures. If those sperm were exposed to our blood, they would be attacked. Okay, so the immune cells would say, oh, those aren't self. I need to attack them and destroy them. So what happens is we have these tight junctions that are going to protect the sperm and the testes from the blood. We can get the nutrients in, but they're not going to touch the immune cells. Okay, so now here's the picture. The testes are divided up into these lobules. Okay, and in these lobules are these tubes. Okay, and in these tubes, here's what you're going to see. Okay, so you're going to see sustentacular cells. These are these little helper cells that are in here. Okay, you're going to see spermatogonia. So those are baby sperm. And then spermatotids are on their way to becoming sperm. And then you're going to see sperm. And what happens is as the immature sperm are on the outside, and as they get more mature, they go towards the inside. So this is going to be the whole. Okay, now, what's going to happen is the sperm are going to develop in here. Okay, they're going to travel into these tubes here that are called the ret testes. Okay, and then they're going to go to the epididymis, and that's where they're going to hang out and mature. Okay, and then from the epididymis, they're going to travel this way and out the ductus deferens into the body. Okay, now, how does all this work? This picture shows, okay, so we're going to start with number one. We're going to walk you through. Okay, so number one, we're going to start up here at the hypothalamus. So what will happen is the hypothalamus will stimulate gonadotropin-releasing hormone. Okay, and that's going to travel down through the infundibulum to the anterior pituitary. The anterior pituitary is going to make follicle-stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. Follicle-stimulating hormone is going to come in, and it's going to stimulate these sustentacular cells, so these helper cells. What these cells are going to do is they're going to make androgen-binding protein, and it's going to help keep it gives the testosterone some place to go, some place to hook up to. So when it hooks up to it, it's going to get the testosterone level high in the testes. Okay, now, we didn't talk about the interstitial cells yet, so let me go back once. Okay, if you picture this, and there's a whole bunch of tubes put together, in between the tubes there are cells. Okay, and the cells in between there, they're called interstitial cells. Those are the cells that make testosterone. Okay, so they're really important. So they're going to be in between the seminiferous tubules. Okay, now, we have the FSH coming down. It binds to the ABP. Okay, wait a minute. FSH comes down. It triggers the sustentacular cells to produce ABP. Okay, now, oops, did you hear my dryer? Okay, now, here's the anterior pituitary again. It's going to produce luteinizing hormone. Luteinizing hormone is going to come down, and it's going to tell the interstitial cells to make testosterone. Okay, so these guys, okay, so here comes the testosterone. So testosterone's being produced, ABP is being produced. Okay, they hook up together, and what happens is you have this testosterone. So the testosterone does a couple things. So one thing it's going to do is it's going to cause male secondary sex characteristics, libido. Okay, it's also going to come down. It's going to cause spermatogenesis. Okay, and so here we go. We're going to make sperm. Okay, once the testosterone level gets so high, we're going to have negative feedback. So once the testosterone level gets so high, the levels are so high in the blood, it's going to come back. Okay, and it's going to inhibit the hypothalamus and the anterior pituitary so that they don't keep producing GnRH and FSH and LH. So we don't end up with too much testosterone. Okay, another thing that the sustentacular cells are going to do is once the sperm count gets so high, the sustentacular cells will secrete inhibin. So inhibin, if you think about it, it inhibits. So what it's going to do is it's going to come back. It's going to cause the release. Okay, so here comes the inhibin, and it's going to go up here, and it's going to stop the hypothalamus from releasing GnRH and stop the anterior pituitary from releasing FSH and LH. So hopefully that makes sense. So the green arrows are it's going, and the red arrows mean it's inhibiting. Okay, so let me